Hi guys, my name is Pasha. I teach Russian for people who speak English, and in this video I want to guide you through Russian diminutives. This is not going to be like a set of grammatical formulas or tables that are going to show you what suffixes can combine with what words. I'm going to be more talking to you why people use it, why is it important, why does it exist in the Russian language. I speak 3 languages fluently: English, Russian, and Chinese, and this feature is unique to Russian. I did not find this in English or Chinese. Like, I've heard people refer to their sons as Sunny, or like kid can turn into kiddo, right? But these words are more like exceptions. In Russian, for example, сын, we have word сын, right, which is son. It's fascinating that it's basically the same word, сын and son. In English, it's sunny. In Russian, is сыночек, сынуля, сынулик, сынок. So I can come up with 4 diminutive forms for one word, and the same would go for дочка. Дочь. So the word is дочь, like daughter, дочь. So дочь can be дочка, доченька, дочурка, дочурочка, like like diminutives on top of diminutives. Like it's quite a fascinating world, and almost any kind of noun for a person or for like a physical thing, for physical object, can have a diminutive form. With diminutives, we're talking about suffixes. Some suffixes are added to the word. Usually they include suffixes that have little k in there. There is a set of suffixes that you will see when you'll encounter words like this. I don't see there is any point in like learning, memorizing all of them, because this topic is not really a prerequisite, to be able to speak like a smooth grammatical, like Russian in a grammatical way, like in a proper way, because we have other things to attend to, right? We have падежи, we have склонение, спряжение, we have a lot of things to take care of, and diminutives are just like a fun treat. This diminutive is quite fascinating. Like anything, like almost anything, can become like a cuter, a smaller version of itself in Russian. And for example, like internet can become internetic. So sometimes even abstract objects can become diminutive. So do you love internet to the way where you can call it internetic? Like some people do. I mean, it is really, so you see, like it opens freedom for so much word building. Like I think exactly, I found this concept really, really fascinating. That's why I wanted to share with you, like on this channel. So you have words like divan can become divanчик, телефон can become telefonчик, like друг can become дружок, or подруга can become подружка, like стакан can become стаканчик, салат can become салатик, пельмени can become пельмешки, борщ can become борщик, right? Дружок sounds a bit weird though. I've got to say names: Masha, Mashinka, like Vadim, Vadimchik. Keep in mind that diminutive versions are like tinier, smaller, more like cutesy versions of a word. So for example, if I have 2 words for you, дом и домик, which of these 2 pictures you would say is a dom, and which one is a domik? Right, I think it's quite obvious, right? So this one is domik. Or for example, look at this picture. Would you say this is a dom or a domik? This is a domik. This is, of course, a domik. So you see, because children play with it, it's a smaller house. It's a domik, right? So in English, you probably say it's a toy house. It's a toy house. In Russian, you just say домик. You can't say игрушечный домик, right? Игрушечный домик, to refer to it being like a toy, because игрушечный is like a прилагательное that was formed from, like an adjective that was formed from the word игрушка, like a toy. So игрушечный домик. You can say игрушечный домик, but if you just say домик, that will be obvious that you're referring to a smaller toy, that like you're referring to a toy house, a toy, because it's домик, not dom. Looking at these 2 pictures, which one you'd think is a машина and which one you would think is a машинка? Right? Obviously, right, the one that is smaller, cuter is a машинка. Yeah, and this one, would it be a машина or машинка? Of course it'll be a машинка, right? Because this is like a toy car. You don't have to say игрушечная машинка, right? You could say that, and sometimes people do. As you've seen from the first example, it can be used when talking about when talking to kids about stuff that kids use. We often use diminutives when talking to kids, and everything can become diminutive. Like when talking about body parts, ручка, пальчик, instead of рука, палец, личико, лицо, губы, губки, нос, носик, ухо, ушки, the ушко одно or ушки plural, the волосики, like to talk about either like small hairs or talking about like a diminutive of hair, toys around them, food around them, like objects around them. People often use diminutives when talking to small kids. Ложка becomes ложечка, тарелка becomes тарелочка, стол becomes столик, куб, кубик. Which of these pictures you would say is a cube, and which one do you think is a cubic? Right? Cubic, a smaller one, a cuter one, is the kid's toy. So when a kid is playing with like he's like toy cubes, we would say кубики, играет с кубиками. Малыш играет с кубиками, да? Мальчик играет с кубиками. Девочка играет с кубиками. For example, in English, I know that you have baby voice. So think about diminutive sometimes as like another layer of like a baby voice, because some people would, for example, when they talk to their kids, obviously like they tend to speak in a higher pitch a little bit, but in Russian they also add diminutives to that. So often they would say, ой, как у тебя носик не болит, горлышко не болит у тебя там, да. So people sometimes use like diminutives when talking to kids. Some people might find it like irritating or annoying that, you know, people sometimes find like a baby voice irritating in English speaking culture. Same goes for Russian, but I personally do not think that, like, I'm not sure how I feel about baby voice, you know, this high pitch. Like, I may criticize it, but when I see like a cute pet, a cute dog or a cat, I start speaking like in weird voices as well. So I'm not here to criticize people who, because I am probably one of them as well. But then people sometimes criticize this diminutives when speaking to kids. In Russian culture, people say that this is unnecessary. You should, like, from the child's birth, you should speak to them like in adults' language. You should not kind of speak to them in this cutesy diminutive language. It serves no purpose. Some people have this opinion. I think it's just part of the Russian language. I think it's just part of how we express affection, warmth, of how we express kind of warm feelings towards something. So I think that it's kind of a necessary part of the language. So I see no harm in kind of just introducing this language to the kid, because as you'll see like further, it is actually quite actively used in Russian language. And also I've heard this idea that diminutives help a child identify nouns, because they've noticed a pattern that almost any object around them has this little ik, like this little something with a k at the end. So a child notices that, and maybe it helps them to identify that this word is an object, this word is like a toy, and they can maybe dissect and find words that talk to objects to make it easier for them to learn these words, right? Because again, if there's there's like a blizzard of words coming at you when you're a baby, стульчик, ложечка, like this little versions with ink, ik, like all these different suffixes help them realize that, okay, this is an object, and helps them to memorize them better. So maybe that could be the case why we like it. Even outside of like kids language, outside of this kind of quote unquote like baby voice like type thing, it also can be used by people. So someone can say, слушай, у меня проблема. Слушай, у меня есть одна проблема. Or they can say, слушай, у меня есть одна проблемка. So do you notice проблема versus проблемка? In one situation, when the person says проблемка, it sounds like they're trying to minimize their problem. They're trying to make it seem less serious than it maybe is. So sometimes people use it to minimize the seriousness of something. Or for example, someone can say, да, у меня есть пара вопросов. Yes, I have a couple of questions. У меня есть пара вопросов. Or they can say, да, у меня есть пара вопросиков. Да, пара вопросиков. Хочу задать пару вопросиков. I want to ask a couple of questions. Right? So sometimes people want to make it less like, make it look less serious, less important, by using diminutives. So talking about everyday stuff, not just kid stuff. Someone may say like, одну секундочку сейчас, instead of saying одну секунду, right? Одну секунду. It's a common expression, as like in English you would say 1 moment please. I think 1 second, probably people also, I think I've heard 1 second as well. So it's pretty much the same in Russian. Одну секунду. Some people may say it as одну секундочку, одну секундочку. Sometimes it reeks off like lack of self-confidence and the lack of kind of, self-assuredness. So I think sometimes people might feel a bit weirded out when people overuse diminutives. People do use diminutives, like, and I see sometimes to maybe make someone appear less serious or less important, and maybe not to bother someone with their small and worthless problems, it can make communication quite difficult if people overuse it. Да, задачку надо одну закончить, задачку, Отчетик надо подготовить, отчетик. Instead of отчет, like a report, отчетик надо подготовить, отчетик. Отчетик. Again, I think that in Russian culture, this diminutive like speak is more associated with women. Probably in most situations, in most cultures, kids spend more of their time in their like early childhood. They spend more of the time with their mothers. So that's why maybe you expect mothers to speak more in this like use more diminutives because they just speak to maybe their kid more than their dad. Maybe it's some roles. Maybe it's just some like roles assigned to like men, women in society that would kind of could dictate it. It's hard to tell, but I definitely expect women to overuse diminutives more. Like, I think I've seen people, and I think most Russian probably have met people like that who would say, ой, приветик, да, ну как, ну сейчас подождем одну секундочку, сейчас меня кому позвонить человечку одному, да, как they can say человечек, instead of человек, they can say человечек, да, очень приятный человечек, да, a very pleasant person, or очень неприятный человечек, a really unpleasant person. So I expect a woman to talk like that more than a man. I mean, men also use, but when it, sometimes it can go a bit too far, and when it becomes almost every word becomes diminutives, it can sound a bit weird and can come off as immature a little bit sometimes, or like as lacking in self-confidence. That's kind of the impression that it gives. So we're talking about like, yeah, women overusing diminutives sometimes more than men, but then if you look at situations like, о, солнышко на улице светит, someone can stand outside and say, oh, the sun is shining. So they can change солнце to солнышко to kind of express their gratitude to this, to kind of for being able to receive this warmth of the sun. Like they can say солнышко because they're excited to see the sun, right? Sometimes people can say снежок пошел instead of снег пошел, снежок пошел. So it just started to snow, снежок пошел. Again, to show kind of excitement about this weather, not being like annoyed about this weather, but being like kind of surprised and just enjoying the weather. So you'd say снежок instead of снег. You could say дождик, опять дождик пошел. Like it started to rain again. It's raining again. Дождик пошел. You see, дождик, дождь becomes дождик. And it's not about, not only women say that, I would say absolutely not. Солнышко, дождик. I mean, I think it's just nature. Like, деревце, деревце выросло. Like, instead of дерево, деревце выросло. Like, you express your love towards nature, your appreciation of nature, like how inspired it makes you feel, like how warm you feel about, like how feeling of warmth it inspires in you. Цветочек, посмотри, рядом с дорогой цветочек, посмотри, take a look, there's like a flower near the road. The цветочек, цветочек. People often say цветочек instead of цветок. And it's not only women, I think everyone, because it's just universal appreciation of nature and the beauty of nature. So people can say цветочек, деревце, кустик, травка, instead of трава, травка, растет, травка зеленая. For example, I cannot think of a diminutive for небо. Maybe небушка, but it looks a bit awkward because небо is so huge, like it's just like it's hard to think of a diminutive for me. It's just diminutives look awkward for me when I think about the sky. And another use that I've noticed that is outside of kind of smaller, cuter, is when people talk about food. So Russian people do love like big family gatherings, big family like get-togethers, like they love a good feast. In Russian we call it застолье, застолье, right? You know the word stol? Застолье – это когда люди сидят за столом. It's when people are sitting at the table, за столом. Yeah, it's a bit an exception because usually за is behind something, but here за стол, it means like to sit at the table. And застолье, it's like a feast. It's like when people gather to eat together, like a get together. So people, Russian people do love a good застолье. And during a застолье, I can easily imagine people using a lot of diminutives. So, for example, can say, oh, попробуй салатик, попробуй салатик. Instead of попробуй салат, someone can say попробуй салатик, попробуй рыбку, попробуй рыбку. Like instead of попробуй рыбу, попробуй рыбку, попробуй пюрешечку, пюрешечку. So instead of puree, it becomes пюрешечка. Курица becomes курочка, попробуй курочку. Возьми хлебушка, возьми хлебушка. Instead of хлеб, it becomes хлебушка. Pretty much any word can become diminutive during a table. Maybe it's just my background. Maybe it's just my parents who use it a lot. And again, I can see both my dad and my mom using it. It's not only limited to women. Again, my granddad. Maybe it's just this kind of the environment that my parents grew up with that maybe people put a lot of emphasis on, particularly on like on a good zastolya. So maybe kind of that's what it means. Maybe some Russian speakers will disagree and say that it sounds a bit weird. Salatik, to say, like a man say salatik, it sounds a bit weird. To me, it doesn't sound weird. I think it kind of shows warmth, like you're wanting to, like, you're almost like adding additional layer of warmth, additional layer of like goodwill to this when you're offering someone food, like, because like, again, food represents here, like, when you're among your family, among your people who you love, you're not just sharing food with them, you're like sharing, it's like an expression of warmth, of your kind of extension of your love, kind of is in this food. So that's why you say that, kartoshечка, пельмешки. You kind of show how you adding like another layer of warmth. Maybe it is connected to how you're talking to your kid. When like parents can offer food to their kids, they can often use diminutives. Maybe it's somehow related to that. But again, I think it's just like you're adding like warmth to that message. And also, when you're talking about food that you really, really like if someone really likes like курица с майонезом, like chicken with mayonnaise, people do like mayonnaise quite a lot in Russia. They can say that, oh, курочка с майонезом, моя любимая, right? Someone can say, oh, курочка с майонезом. So instead of saying курица, they say курочка. Or the same for, exactly, as I mentioned, пельмешки. So from пельмени, just like a normal, like a dumplings type of food that is native to, all sorts of cultures, but we think that it's originated like in Siberia, like in more colder regions of Russia. And also names, like personal names, can be diminutives. So I think like names is a whole other subject. Please let me know in the comments if you want to see me kind of make this like a small guide about Russian names and kind of how they work, and maybe some interesting names. Maybe especially some traditional names will be interesting to cover that. And yeah, names can have a lot of diminutive forms. Like, as you notice, sin has a lot of diminutive forms because it refers to a person. Like, it's something you use in the conversation. And the same goes for Russian names. So, for example, my name, Pasha, like, to most people, I'm just Pasha and Pavel, right? Pavel, more official name, and Pasha, a more like casual name, Pasha. And also, my name has a lot of diminutive, a lot of cutesy like versions that are like reserved from my loved ones, like for my sisters or for like people who are in relationship with me. So you see, like there are names. So there are names like Pavlik, Pashenka, Pashula, Pash. Even just removing a Pash becomes like a interesting like a diminutive form. So see, there I came up with like 4 versions for my name, and I think you don't really have to learn them, because when people are ready for you to call them that name, they will let you know. They will let you know. Sometimes using a diminutive can come off as like rude, as like almost like an intrusion on person's person's privacy. Like, because I did not give you access to this name. Like, why are you calling me that? Like, for example, think of that lady in the office. Remember, we talked about like a person who overuses diminutives a lot. So they say, "Ой, приветики, дай секундочку, сейчас я посмотрю в телефончике, что там такое, сообщение пришло, сообщение маленькое пришло, да. Ой, привет, Светочка, привет, Наташенька, привет, Димочка, привет, да, привет, Тёмочка." So she calls her colleagues with these diminutives, and some people may be really, really weirded out by that. It's kind of calling someone like a babe, or like, I don't know, you see like some term. It's a term of affection. Like, it's not for you. Like, you're not someone's best friend, or like a lover, or like or like a husband and wife. No. So why are you using that then? Like, it sounds a bit irritating. Also, there are interesting words that sound like they're diminutives, but actually they're used to talk about different things. So, for example, we have the word mozg, right? Mozg. And we have word mozжечок. Mozжечок sounds like it's diminutive, like a smaller version of a mosque. And it's kind of weird. Like, can you imagine like making mosque cute? Like, it sounds a bit improbable. Basically, these 2 words refer to 2 different things, 2 different objects. They refer to 2 different organs. They're not the same word. They're 2 different concepts. Or people in Russia can say статуя. Pretty much like statue, like, yeah, статуя и статуэтка. Which one do you think is like a bigger thing that you put like to decorate your interior, and which one do you think is a smaller, like a little statuette? I would say that, yeah, statuetka is usually something smaller, like a small, like a knick-knack sort of thing. Or, for example, there is Russian food, pirog. So Russian pirog и пирожок. Which of these 2 things do you think is a pirog, and which one do you think is a пирожок? Right, so pirожок, but pirожок is kind of a different type of pastry. It's a different kind of thing from pirog. Even though they share a lot of similarities, it's just basically a lot of dough with some filling, right? but they're kind of served differently, they're cooked differently, so they're kind of different dishes. But you see, we use diminutives to kind of distinguish between like this type and this type of thing. Or for example, someone can refer to like a cute animal or a cute toy as pushystic, which is not a diminutive of anything. Like there's an adjective pushysty, but it's not really a noun. And kind of pushystic, it's like a cute word for someone fluffy. Pushysty, it's fluffy. So pushystic, it's like a cute word, either a cat or a dog, or maybe like a fluffy toy animal. They can refer to them as pushystic. The purpose of this video was not like to let's memorize the suffixes. This was more like to, in a playful way, to introduce you to kind of why it exists in Russian language, in what situations people usually use it, so that maybe you get more accustomed to it, and maybe at some point in your language journey, maybe you'll even start using it. Because I think Russian people do. You see, it's a fun thing. Like it's just a fun thing. It's like it opens like doors for a lot of exploration, a lot of like imaginative like play on words, when you can just make anything like diminutive and cute. Internetic is a fun example. Internetic, like it shouldn't exist, but like it sounds really fun and like ironic, like internetic. And it's kind of this like a group, Kontakte group. Kontakte is like one of the most popular social media websites. Kind of like MySpace plus Facebook, kind of an interesting situation. There's a Kontakte group which is called Internetic, and they try to post like wholesome, cute memes that are inspiring, uplifting memes. If I remember correctly, because I haven't been on the group for a while, but that's what I remember from it. And you see, Internetic is kind of like a good advertising for them, right? It's kind of exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to make like cute internet, like a cute, wholesome internet. So they call it Internetic, which I think is quite cute. So you see, this kind of play on words is quite welcome, and people would find it funny. Thank you guys for watching. If this content resonates with you, do subscribe to this channel to learn Russian with me. I am Pasha Kovalenko. I teach Russian for people who speak English. I combine student books with movies, books, poems, songs, to show you what real Russian looks like. During my lessons, I model different situations where you might need to use this particular aspect of a grammar. Like we're learning grammar to actually use it. I make my lessons as engaging and interesting as possible. My goal is to elicit emotional response in my students so that they have connection to kind of the grammar, to vocabulary that they learned, to make it personal to them. So yeah, that's kind of my goal. And if that resonates with you, book a lesson via my Telegram or the email I left in the description of this video. So thank you guys for watching, and see you in the future videos. Goodbye.